Next, I want to introduce you to a guy named Bob Loeffler. It's funny because this is supposed to be motivation. You're going to learn something from everybody. The first line of his intro on this card says he decided to get into the real estate market in 1984. The market was terrible, and his timing could not have been worse. Not exactly the way you want to start an intro, Bob. After failing miserably for 5 years, he made a decision that would change his career forever. Bob and his partner then went on to become the #1 top-producing team for Century 21 in the state of Arizona. He was the director of training and recruiting for a top office in Arizona. He's the creator and owner of Fearless Agent Coaching and Training. As a result, there are now thousands of Fearless Agent Coaching students all over the U.S., Canada, and other countries who are earning more than they ever dreamed, loving real estate, and all because they learned the science of sales from Bob. He's done stand-up comedy, he's had his own radio shows, and he's a lot of fun to work with. He has more fun at work than most people do at parties. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Loeffler.
Thank you very much. So success is what I talk about to real estate agents every day. I teach real estate agents how to become successful salespeople. I teach real estate company owners how to recruit successful agents, and so we're going to hear from a lot of successful people tonight. And when we see people who are successful, we wonder how did they do it, but one of the ways they did it is they avoided the things that cause failure. So I just want to talk about 5 of those with you tonight. My story is he mentioned that I got into real estate in 1984. The average house in Scottsdale, I'm from Scottsdale, by the way. Grew up here. One of the former radio hosts on this station said that Scottsdale is like this. We have no gangs, but we do have very impolite maitre d's, so you want to be careful. I always say, if you come to Scottsdale, whether you spend an hour or you spend a day, for the love of God, spend. That's what I'm saying, okay? Pay my taxes. But I get into real estate. I'm 27. I'm a high school dropout. I have a big afro, and my real estate car is a Harley. So I'm poised for success. Would you agree? But I knew I would be successful because I have a good attitude. How many of you would agree that attitude is everything? Well, it just goes to show you how wrong you can be. Yeah. I failed miserably for 5 years until I learned some secrets of success. That one of them was how to sell, the skills, the schedule, the systems that I call of the fearless agent. But I'm going to share some other secrets of success with you. One of them is faith. I am one of those guys who grew up going to church every Sunday. I am a Lutheran. Any Lutherans in the audience? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. For the rest of you, it's like Catholic with less guilt and more alcohol. Am I right? That's it. But I have noticed that a lot of people kind of fell away from the church when they had a problem in their life, and a lot of other people that never went to church had a problem, and then they end up going to a faith tradition. And I think anybody's life is improved when it's not all about you. And if you were to read the Bible and boil it down to 2 words, it would be serve others. I think we should do that. Number 2 would be addiction avoidance. You know, if you've, and I'm talking about alcohol, drugs, legal and illegal, food, pornography, gambling. America has an addiction problem. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C. and seen the Vietnam Memorial, there's 58,000 names on that wall for, I think, an 8-year war, if I'm not mistaken. This year, 62,000 people will die just of a heroin overdose in 1 year. And that doesn't count all the people who die from meth, alcohol, overeating, gambling. They end up committing suicide. That's the #1 problem in America today. If we can avoid that, we're going to be better off, obviously. Number 3 is impulse control. Delayed gratification. That's important. I looked up poor impulse control on my phone, Googled it. Kathy Griffin's picture was there. I don't know how that happened. Below it was some tweets from a famous politician. I'm just saying, right? But I always tell my customers, if you're in a bad mood, never email, never tweet, never text, always call. But before you call, wait a little while, right? Nothing bad could happen from just pausing to reflect. The other one is trust. There's an old saying that goes, trust not he who trusts not. I have a volunteer job where I work with people who are criminally insane. They're locked in a place. And all of them are extremely skeptical. They believe in every conspiracy theory. And honest people are always very trusting. So if you come across very skeptical, people will think you're maybe not so honest yourself. And then finally, and Tim mentioned it, is humility. And when I think of humility, I'm reminded of a guy who lived in the area of town, South Scottsdale, where I sold real estate. His name was Robert Nicholson. And he was this old guy who was about 85 years old. And so I would call him and say, hey, do you want to sell your house? And he said yes. I'd meet with him. And then he'd end up having a health problem, end up in the hospital because he's old. But when I would meet with him, he was an interesting guy. He had all these Robb Report magazines laying around his house. And I said, what's that all about? He goes, well, I just like to look at the pictures of watches and yachts and stuff like that. And then he had been a salesperson in his life, so he gave me these old 1950s sales books, and he had been a musician. So he played the trombone in a Dixieland jazz band when he was younger, and that's the guys with the straw hats and the little arm garter and the, when the Saints go marching in, that kind of stuff. So super nice guy. So then I get a call one day from his son, and his son says, hey, my dad's in the hospital, and I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. Could you go over and get a power of attorney signed just in case we need to sell his house and he's not, stuck in the hospital? I said, sure, let's do that. So I go over, take a notary person with me, gave him a couple of Robb Report magazines, cheer him up, and he looked like he was doing fine. So we talked for about an hour, and then I go home, and then about 3 weeks later, his son calls me and says, hey, my father passed away. And I said, hey, I'm sorry to hear that. He goes, would you be interested in going to the memorial service? And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. My partner and I will go. Every day, he would go to the mall, Fashion Square Mall, like old people do sometimes. And he would go to the Nordstroms, and he would sit at the piano. And he's not a customer there. He would just kind of loitering and drinking coffee. And they would have the piano player and other musicians. So he did that every day. Do you know that the manager of the Nordstroms allowed us to have this memorial service at the piano when the store was closed? That's humility, right? The other thing I always think of is Salvation Army. Salvation Army, I don't know, you see them ringing the red kettle bell and the thrift stores, but what they do, I'm going to have a little water if I may. Who's heard of Marco Rubio? Okay. I'm going to do my Marco Rubio imitation. But they ring the red kettle bell, but what they do is they take the hardest people to help, hopeless, homeless, alcoholics, and drug addicts, pull them off the street. They give them a nice, clean place to stay, give them 3 square meals a day, give them a little spiritual guidance, and they give them a job to do. And their stats are better than Betty Ford. So what is it that makes the difference? Is it the nice, clean place to stay? No, because you can go to a Motel 6 anywhere in town. They'll leave the light on for you, probably, right? It's probably a good idea. It's in a bad neighborhood normally. Is it the 3 square meals a day? Free food is abundant in America. Is it the spiritual guidance? There's a church on every street corner. It's the job they give them that makes the difference. And it's the job of making a difference. Freely giving to another alcoholic or drug addict what was so freely given to them, that's the job. Making a difference is what makes a difference. It's giving an old man and his family and his friends the dignity that he deserved in the place he liked to go in the Nordstroms. That's what makes the difference. That's humility. And, it's funny. We could all be successful and not be faithful. We could all be successful and not avoid addiction, maybe. We could all be successful and have poor impulse control, perhaps. We could all be successful and maybe not be trusting or trustworthy. We could all be successful and not be humble. We could be arrogant. But, Damon Runyon once said that the race is not always won by the swift, nor the battle by the strong, but that is the way to bet it. I hope that's the way you bet it. Thanks very much. God bless you.